Someone has a problem after the minimum.
Parshas Pinchas. Okay, Parshas Pinchas, let's go. Parshas Pinchas, Likkutei Torah, page Ayin Hey at the bottom. The pasuk says, "Tzavos b'nei Yisrael v'amart aleihem." Tell this what we say in the Chodesh Kriya this week's Parsha. It's said every day in davening, twice a day. Tzavos b'nei Yisrael command the Yidden v'amart aleihem and tell them as korban ilach min ishai, my korban, my bread for my burnt offerings. And then the pasuk says, "V'amart aleihem." That's what you should tell them. Zeh isha. This is the burnt offering that you should do to Hashem. So he says, "Lahavim mal v'amarta beis pamim." The pasuk says, "Tzavos b'nei Yisrael v'amarta aleihem," and then the next pasuk says again, "V'amarta aleihem." Why does it say twice v'amarta? So he says, "Hine kol hamitzvah sarchodem l'kayim machshava dibur ha'maisa." Every mitzvah a person has to fulfill in thought, speech, and action. Meaning, l'chein b'karbanis. The same thing in karbanis machshava zu tefillah aveda shebalev shekeneged karbanis. For instance, the mitzvah of karbanis, which now is davening instead. So you have the aveda shebalev, the kavana of davening, which is the thinking. The dibur hu talmud Torah the karbanis, and speech is the speech of karbanis, because the Gemara says kol ha'esik b'Torah se'ela. Whoever learns the laws of karban oil is like you brought one. And that Torah learning is by speech. And then you have the action of the karbanis. The sheep, the year, meaning like this. You have a mitzvah called karbanis. So you have the thought of karbanis, which is the kavana of davening. Then you have the speech, which is the learning of Torah of karbanis. And then you have the action of karbanis. The second pasuk that says, this is what you should tell them, the actual laws of the karbanis, that's the action of karban. Pasuk Rishon of Tzavos b'nei Yisrael, and the first pasuk that says, command them and tell them, that goes on machshava dibur. Okay? So the Rebbe says, there's thought, speech, and action. The second pasuk is speaking about the action. The first pasuk is speaking about thought and speech. Bearing in them, B'chlal, to explain this whole thing, and we need to understand. It says in the pasuk, by all the karbanis, it says you should bring them as a good smell for Hashem. Chazal explain what does it mean, because Rashi, as Rashi brings down, there's no worse smell than the burnt skin, and it's not a barbecue, it's the skin of the carbon. It stinks, all the inside of the carbon, it's just a terrible smell. So how does it mean, reach nichayach la Hashem, a good smell for Hashem? So Chazal explain, it means nachas ruach lefanai. What is the pleasure that I have, Hashem says, before me, shamarti v'nasa retzeni, that I told them to do it, and they listened. In other words, what's the good smell of Hashem? That Hashem told them to do karbanas, and they did it. That's the good smell. So the Alter Rebbe says, if that's the case, says shayach b'chol ha-mitzvahs. Every mitzvah is like that. Hashem says, put on tefillin, you put on tefillin. By tefillin, it doesn't say, reach nichayach Hashem, a good smell for Hashem. From all the mitzvahs, every mitzvah we do it because Hashem said so, we do it. So why only by karbanis does it say the expression, reach nichayach Hashem, it's a good smell for Hashem. The whole concept of sacrifices only applies in the Beis HaMikdash, right? He said, "Masha'en ken shar mitzvahs, v'talmud Torah keneged kulam." All the other mitzvahs apply all times. Why can't we have a concept of karbanis today? And he says, "Afilu machshava dibur karbanis, shem tefila keneged karbanis, v'talmud Torah keneged karbanis yichem lekam zman hazeh v'shem Beis HaMikdash kaim." And the second thing the Alter Rebbe says like this. Remember, he said, the thought of carbon is davening. The speech of carbon is learning. Okay, that we have today also. You can daven and you learn. But why is the action of karbanis not existing today? So number one, why is this concept reach nichayach only by karbanis? If every mitzvah we do is because Hashem told us to do it, then we do it. And secondly, why don't we have the action of karbanis? The thought and speech of karbanis we have today, but not the action. Why?
So you don't have the
He said Hashem could have made it. We have it anyway, like bamis or whatever.
Rabbi, isn't it simply that when you make a barbecue, it makes a good smell?
No,
Yeah. Now with all the garbage inside the animal and the
You
skin,
don't do barbecue with the barbecue, you don't the whole thing.
the feathers, the inside garbage that comes out of the animal. Are you kidding? It stinks.
The hooves.
Everything. Okay. Achine calls them. All this Yuvin behegdim. We need to understand. So basically, the Alter Rebbe says like this: why only karbanis is reich nechayach, and why don't we have the action of karbanis today? Achine calls a Yuvin behegdim. We'll first understand this by introducing Bashakotz vayem la'seisam v'leilam machal la'seisam. It says that Sha'anechi mitzavcha hayem. Chazal say, Rashi brings it down in Chumash, I'm commanding you today la'seisam, to do them. Today we do mitzvahs. Tomorrow, Gan Eden, we get the reward. V'leilam machal la'seisam, and you can't do mitzvahs in Gan Eden. She'elam hazeh dafka, hu elam ha'maisa. Dafka, this world is a world of action. Ubei nitna b'chira b'yad, and here we have the choice in the person, livcha b'tayv, to choose good. Only in this world do we have the opportunity and ability to choose doing or not doing, choose sinning or not sinning. Not only that, but in this world, even if you sinned, you could do tshuva. In other words, like this: number one, in this world is the only world of doing. You can't do anything Gan Eden. Secondly, you can only do tshuva in this world. You can't do tshuva in Gan Eden. It's too late. So he said, "Masha'en came b'olam haba." In olam haba, though, ein ha'bechira chavshus b'yad ha'adam. There's no free choice in the hand of a person. The way action is done in this world, that's what the way it remains in olam haba. You can't change it. Once you finish this world, what you did, you did. What you didn't do, you didn't do, and there's no changing. While we're alive in this world, you can change. You didn't do a mitzvah, you do tshuva. You did an aveda, you do tshuva. Why is that? Agam shareya shamgili elukus b'yasaseis l'chayra. Even though in Gan Eden there's a greater revelation of godliness, I would think in the reverse. Where can you do tshuva where there's a greater revelation of Hashem? In Gan Eden. But yet, where there's a greater revelation of Hashem, you can't have free choice. You can't have tshuva. You can't do any more mitzvahs. Why? In the ruchniistic world, everything is bottled to Hashem. Even evil up there is also bottled to Hashem. Like he says, because like the Gemara says, the evil says God is the God of the gods. Okay, that means they believe in God. So there is a certain bittul in the spiritual realms, even of evil to Kedusha. So why is there no mitzvahs there?
Is there evil in the spiritual world?
Relatively speaking, yes.
Which cannot exist.
Huh?
Evil.
He says they exist in a way that they believe God is the God of the gods, meaning they believe in other gods, but they also believe God is the God of gods. You know, the mitzvahs these days is the mitzvah of Avodah Zarah, right? 52 mitzvahs in Avodah Zarah, yeah? But the Rambam started with the help of Avodah Zarah by explaining how did the people come to make such a mistake? Come on, Adam and Isha saw God. I mean, where did this begin from? So he says, the Rambam says that they made a very big mistake. The mistake began because people knew everything was God. They knew that. But they said, you know, listen, the sun gives light, the moon gives light, the star this, the sun makes things grow, you know. let's also give respect to the sun and moon. Not instead of God. We should also think the servants. You say thank you. Say thank you to the servants. So they began saying thank you to the servants. And then it went further, and people started saying that God himself said that you have to give thanks to these people. I mean, to these suns and the moons and everything else. And from there, from there it got that people began only worshiping them. To give another example in halacha, whether it applies today is questionable. But the Gemara says, if somebody has X amount of non-rainwater, gimel lugim mayim shuvim, if 3 lug of mayim shuvim fall on you, you become tamei. You become tamei if 3 lugim, which is, a lug is, let's say, 12 ounces, so this is 36 ounces of non-rainwater falls and you become tummy. That's the whole question. Can you take a shower after the mikveh? Do you become tummy again? Whatever. Question doesn't apply today. So Gemara says in Shabbos, why did that happen? The mikvehs years ago were dirty holes in the ground. Okay? So what people do after they tabled in the mikveh, they would go into clean water to wash off the dirt from the mikveh. Yeah? So after a while, people began thinking, the mikveh doesn't purify me, this water purifies me. So instead of going to the mikveh, they just took the shower, so to speak. So Chum said, you know what, no, we can't have that. People are going to stop using mikveh. Same thing like a Vedi Zorah. It begins with innocence, and then it ends up being a disaster. Okay? So therefore, even in the level of Klippa originally, or in spiritual realms, Klippa is also bottled to Kedusha, not like Kedusha is. But still, it's a lower level of Kedusha compared to a higher level of Kedusha is evil. And relatively speaking, it's less bottled than the higher levels of Kedusha. So it is, what?
You said that people in Shemayim basically are there.
People are not in Shemayim.
I mean,
the Shamas are there.
Yeah. The Shamas and Gan Eden, they're basically, they're done. But we say Kaddish for them. The Gemara says that one time this guy was walking.
They go up a little bit, but it's not that the people in the Neshamas and Gan Eden do tshuva. The schus of their children behaving properly can help them, but it doesn't mean they could do tshuva. You can't do tshuva in Gan Eden. So he says, "Afo pikein," and nevertheless, en yochel lishtei benafshe. A person cannot control himself. Yet in Gan Eden, you cannot cleanse yourself from the sins and actions you did in this world. So it doesn't make sense. Even evil is bottled there. So it should be easier to do tshuva there than here. And yet we say in Gan Eden there's no mitzvahs. There's no free choice. You can't do tshuva. So they'll say, but why? And that's the level of kafakela. You know, one of the additional punishments besides Gehenim is kafakela. Shemakal and mashlich and mapil and eisiv machshavesav shenimshach ben be'elu mazeh ba'avi elu mazeh. It says, what's the punishment of kafakela? Kafakela actually means a slingshot. What's a slingshot? You go from one place to the next. You know, you throw the stone. What are the punishments of the neshama in Gan Eden? Is they showed the neshama the thoughts, speech, and action they had in this world of evil. And in Gan Eden, for the neshama out of the body, out of the Yetzer Hara, that's torture. Because over there, the neshama sees truth. So then one of the cleansings of the neshama in Gan Eden is they showed the neshama all the terrible things he did in this world. That's kafakela. And he says, Kehine machshav dibur amaisa. Shem Gimel Levushim, with the thought, speech, and action without the 3 garments. Shem Slabish Beilamazeh, Him Nasim Leilavushim Saku Begodim Tzeidim Leilam Abba. The thought, speech, and action of evil done in this world becomes the filthy garments of the people in Gan Eden, of the Neshamas in Gan Eden.
What does that mean, filthy garment?
If a person doesn't have aid in this world, they create a garment of thought, speech, and action, that when they come up to Gan Eden, they get dirty. So before they get into Gan Eden, they need to be cleansed. It encompasses the nefesh from head to toe. I just saw an interesting thing that in Europe, in Russia and in Poland, they were very, very poor. The Bochum in the yeshiva were very, very poor. And they used to actually wear sack. But the sack had holes in them. There is a poor mamish, the sack had holes in them. So the Friedrich Rebbe said that, I understand you have to wear sack, you don't have money to buy clothing. But why do they have to be torn? He told the Bochum to sew up, patch up the holes in your clothing, that at least they shouldn't be torn. Sack, but that's interesting. Now, can you shanama asiru abegadim atzayim? The Friedrich Rebbe told the people in Paris, I think it was the Friedrich Rebbe, that they should. It's interesting. The Friedrich Rebbe was very much into cleanliness. There's a sikh in the Friedrich Rebbe, he wanted the Bochum to brush their teeth every day, whatever. The Friedrich Rebbe said to the Anash that went from Russia to Paris, they were living in these, who knows how many families in the chateaus, whatever. Friedrich Rebbe said that Eislein the kinder to essen rain. You have to teach the people, the Lubavitchers in Paris have to teach the children to eat neatly, clean. So the Friedrich Rebbe said you have to Eislein the kinder. You should teach the kids to eat, not like slobs, pardon the French, but they should eat properly. Okay, it makes him filthy from head to toe. A prisoner cannot free himself. But like it says in the Navi, remove the filthy garments from you. Okay, so the question is, why is it that in Gan Eden, where there's a greater kedusha, you can't do mitzvahs, you can't do tshuva, and this world you could? So now the Rabbi explains the reason for that is why is it? What's the difference between Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba? Ki be'Olam Haba ein lo davar she'en li makom. In Olam Haba, everything has its place already. In Olam Haba, as he's going to explain, is the level of Mamala Kol Almin, the permeating level of God. In that level, everything has its place, and you can't change A to B and B to A, because, like it says, once light is light and dark is dark, you can't make light into dark, or dark into light. Because once it's identified in a certain level, it is what it is and you can't change it. The only way you could change it is before it becomes identified as you find this in Rashi and Chumash. Rashi says, it's a Gemara, but a guy wants to have a boy or a girl, whatever it is. He says, after 40 days of conception, it's a waste of time. It's a foolish thing to daven, because it's already established. Once it's a boy, you can't make it a girl. And once it's a girl, before it's formed into a boy or a girl, it's still a piece of clay, so to speak, that you can mold. So then you can daven. But once it's established as a thing what it is, you can't change it. So he says, in Olam Haba, Kedusha is Kedusha, Klipa is Klipa, Chesed is Chesed, Gvura is Gvura. It is what it is. So you can't change it. This word, though, is from Seviv Kol Almin. Because it's Seviv Kol Almin, nothing's identified yet.
So in Gehenna, you could still change things?
No, you can't.
Gehenna, you could change things?
No, you can't. You can't do tshuva in Gehenna.
No, I mean,
a person's going to Gehenna, he says, he can't say, okay, I'm going to do tshuva now.
The person does get revolutionized. They get cleansed, they become a different person.
That's not their doing. They're not doing tshuva. Hashem is cleaning them.
That's a spiritual world else.
No.
That's a bad question, but I'm just saying.
No, it is set.
Right.
What you did, the Averis you did coming to Gehenna, you can't change.
But you get reset in that.
Not reset, you get cleansed. You get cleansed. It's not you doing.
But a person does go through a complete